Welcome back to the United Stand. Hope you're all well. I hope you're all good. Has Amorim been backed? Has he not been backed? What is your view? What is your opinion? We're breaking down the latest news. Goalkeepers, midfield players. What is happening with Alejandro Garnacho? What is happening with Jadon Sancho? What is happening with Anthony? We're going into it all this morning. But before we go any further, like, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications as well. Very, very important to us indeed that you do that. You've got to support the channel. And you've seen what supporting the channel does. The big announcement on That's Football dropping very soon. And so much of that is down to you guys. I know this is the United Stand, but I also know there's a lot of crossover there as well. Absolutely brilliant. But morning, everybody. Hello, Ben. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope you're all well. Let me know where you are watching from around the world. I'm very intrigued to know. I love to see the international footballing community coming together. It's one of my favourite things. It's one of my favourite things. It really is. Good morning to Creepy Stories. Good morning to Sandro United. Loads of you in here this morning already, which is nice to see. Absolutely loving it. But I'm just putting something up on my screen. Because obviously we know that there it is. There's the news. There's the big news. And look, I know we are going to talk United, but I just want to say this news from Goldbridge, this news from That's Football is absolutely massive. And if you haven't seen it, go support it after you've watched this show. But That's Football partnering with the Bundesliga. And this is what it says here. That's Football will stream 20 live Bundesliga matches on Friday nights, as well as creating 34 weekly shows in 2025-26. The first creator channel with official league rights, a landmark deal that puts That's Football alongside Sky, the BBC, Amazon, and the Bundesliga. This is absolutely massive in every single which way. I can't wait to get involved. I also think as well, I'm going to say this, it's great. It's something that Mark's worked on. It's something that his team has worked on. It's something that we have worked on as an overall community that can't just be taken and stolen and copied and pasted by somebody else. So listen, I wanted to spend the first few minutes absolutely massive well done to Mark, who deserves so much credit, but also everybody behind the scenes. And I know Mark will thank them as well. I've got to know them over the last 6 or 7 months. You know, everybody that works on these shows, everybody that helps bring them to live. You know, you've got I'm going to name some of them. There's like Matt and there's Greg as an example. There's Ryan. You also have the other presenters that are out there, the best of this world, because these communities all come, Mords, everybody. Kevin, I'm going to forget names. I don't know everybody, right? But the point is, well done to everybody that's made this possible. The fan media, the fan channel community should always come together. It shouldn't be infighting. It shouldn't be at war with each other, because actually together we can grow more. We can grow the pie. We can make this business into something massive that more and more people benefit from. We can make better content than I was actually talking to somebody last night who works for one of the big broadcasters, who speaks about how their shows are literally 5-6 hours worth of rehearsals. It's all scripted. Most of what you hear on TV isn't even that real anymore. So absolutely massive, big congrats and well done to everybody at That's Football, the United Stand, for making this happen, because it's absolutely gargantuan. So well done to everybody involved on that. So make sure you're all heading across to That's Football's X page. Get it retweeted, get it shared. Go let everyone see it. You know, let everyone know how proud you are, because it is your community as well, because I know the crossover is there. So absolutely massive. Sorry, it's the first comment here that comes from James with a member chat. He says, the guy who won't cut his hair until we win 5 league games in a row, not 5 league wins in a row. It's 5 wins in a row, not 5 league wins in a row. Hope that helps. 5 wins we might do. 5 league wins, I'm not too sure. 5 league wins, I am not too sure. But let's get back to Manchester United this morning. Let's get back to United. Let's get back to this conversation, because it was quite a quiet morning when it comes to footballing news. A very, very quiet morning when it comes to Man United news today. And Mark and I were having a conversation this morning on what we're going to talk about, because there was nothing new, nothing breaking. And we thought that actually it was a good time to look at the news over the last few days and to ask a question. Has Ruben Amorim been backed? And when you say backed, I want you to, don't just say yes or no. this is the United stand. That is too basic. That is too easy. That is too simple. What I want to know when I say backed, and we're talking about players bought, the way players have been disciplined, the selling of players, not just the money that has been spent. Has it been backed enough? And what else do you think is going to happen between now and the end of the transfer window? Because for me, I'm already seeing yeses and nos in the comment section. Because for me, the two big things are, will Manchester United get a goalkeeper? Will Manchester United get a midfield player? And the answer is right now, none of us really know. There was very contradictory reports yesterday morning. Some stating that United will buy if they sell. And we'll get into the sales a little later on the show. There were others that said United like Belieber. They couldn't get him. They're going to come back next summer. But there is no guarantee that they will pivot to another midfield player this summer. There was reports coming out of Sevilla about Agume, and I know a lot of people in this comment section right now will be big fans and advocates of this young man. If you look at the data, if you look at the statistics behind him, not just similar to Belieber in many areas, but actually a better passer, a better progressive passer, better key passes, better pass completion, more chance creation. So there's actually an extra string to his bow potentially. So it's very hard for Man United fans right now to know what's happening, because what we haven't had from a Fabrizio, from an Ornstein, from a Ben Jacobs, who seem to be the three lead voices this summer, where when they say something, we kind of get an idea that something is brewing and something could happen. So from that point of view and perspective, I am a little nervous about the midfield, because I think we need someone. And I would have liked to have seen us pivot to an Adam Wharton, a Hayden Hackney, potentially another player whose name was on my mind the other day, who I now seem to have forgotten. How have I forgot his name? Who's the other midfield player we were all looking at? I need someone in the comments. My brain is literally frozen. So we were looking at Belieber, we were looking at Wharton. Who's the other midfield player? That's it, Hillman. That's it. There we go. I was thinking about Premier League players and it just wasn't in my head. So there was this kind of, which one should we go for? The problem is Sporting are saying they don't want to lose any more players now this summer. Palace are probably not going to sell for love nor money. Again, it would take an astronomical bid. It would mean paying well over the odds. And I actually don't advocate for that. I don't think that is back in the manager. And I'll tell you as to why. I get on surface level, just pay 100 million, get it done. We need a player. The problem is if you spend 20, 30, 40 million pound above, not just the valuation that's on the internet, I'm talking about the genuine consensus valuation that fans have, that clubs have. That's never backing a manager in the scenario we're in. And I'll tell you as to why. If we're flush, if we've got loads of money, if we already have a brilliant squad and we need this final piece of the jigsaw to put us on another level, then it makes sense to do that in that way. I think that's very, very sensible. However, when you've got cash flow issues, and Man United have, yes, we've spent money. The reason why we've made cuts is to have this money. We need to be prudent, thrifty, and concise with our money. You spend £40 million too much on a midfield player this summer, that will eat into the budget for next year. That's the type of behaviour that from around 2014, maybe 2015 onwards, we did on such a consistent basis. We overpaid on wages, we overpaid agent fees, we overpaid on transfer fees to land players, and we always ran out of money. There was always, and we remember this under so many managers where we'd go, oh look, if Jose could get this, if Jose could get that, we'll be killing it. No more business for United. They're out of money. We always did this. We always overspent and run out of the readies to be able to complete a build. So from my point of view and perspective, I totally get the want and desire for a midfielder, but we should never be overpaying. We should never be extending ourselves too far. Wolfie here says, not backed. Every manager before got 300 plus million to spend on crap, but Amorim has to sell to buy. Give Amorim the same. Watch what he does with it. Do you know what, Wolfie? I do get that. He inherited a different financial situation compared to the previous managers, but it's because of that they all got 300 plus million every summer. That approach is why we always failed, because we run out of money. We overpaid for players. We've never once completed a squad rebuild to suit the style of manager we pivoted to. We've never done it. Not once. And I stand on that. You can take it to the bank. So I do get your point, but sometimes I think what we have to do is look at what went wrong in a deeper way. Do the 5 whys. Now, the 5 whys are a very, very important process for discovering the true root cause of an issue. Why didn't we spend 300 plus million on him? You ask yourself why. Answer those questions honestly. If you keep saying why 5 times, you typically get to the root cause problem. So for me, I think it's absolutely right that we don't take our spending up from 190 million to 300 million by overspending on a midfield player. That then means next summer, when we need maybe more fullbacks, more centre backs, a better goalkeeper, additional midfielders, we're going to be short again, aren't we? And the problem is there's a mathematical certainty in life that applies to this. If you're 10 meters away from your destination, and every step you take is 50% of the remaining distance, you never get to the end. And that is what Man United have done. We've created almost this weird paradox of impossibility. You never get to your end destination. And we have to be sensible. This is from Christian who says, "Morning, Terry. In my opinion, Amorim isn't backed enough because the 3 forwards now have to score always more than the keeper lets in. And it's a tough ask for that." That's a really good point, right? That we need a new goalkeeper. And that brings us into another segment on this. I think we will get a goalkeeper. This here comes from Sean Connolly. Not Sean Connery, Sean Connolly, okay? Don't confuse him with Mr. James Bond. I think he's dead now, isn't he? Is Sean Connery dead? I swear he died. James Bond. I can't do impressions, but there we go. It says that although outgoings are a priority, Manchester United officials remain keen to bringing in Lemmans in this summer. Ruben Amorim is a big admirer. After providing the green light in July, the player wants to move. And I think that's what we're going to end up doing. I think we're going to end up going for Lemmans. And although the club, and I think the club are doing this for the right reasons. My personal opinion, I think for all the right reasons, we are building this up as, like, he's a backup, he's there to challenge, he's going to replace Bay and Dare. I think one of the reasons we're doing that is we're trying to maintain the value in Onana as much as possible. I think the way we're going to word this, I think the way we're going to frame this is going to be, Lemmans has come in, oh my God, he's pushed Onana out of his first team role. It's not because Onana's not a first-team goalkeeper. It isn't because we don't love Onana. It isn't because we don't rate Onana. It's just Lemmans is a different level. Lemmans he's just so good. I can't believe it. He's just such an amazing player. I'm not trying to out the club here, but I'm just telling you how things are. I'm just telling you the truth of these matters. Because for me, I think we see him as a number one. I think we've had other number one targets ahead of him. I think there have been other players that we rate more than him, other goalkeepers we rate more than him. We clearly went for Emi Martinez first. We clearly, because I believe Fabrice Hawkins made an approach. We were active in the pursuit of Donnarumma. So this idea that we've never thought about getting a new goalkeeper, I just don't buy that spin. So I do listen to what Sean's saying here, and I think he's right. I think we end up going for Lemmans. I think he ends up becoming our number one goalkeeper this year. Whether or not he is good enough is another question. Whether or not he is good enough is another question. And I saw about 2 weeks ago all the different compilations of his mistakes and his errors coming out. The problem is you can do that for most goalkeepers. You literally could put a foul compilation together for Alisson, a foul compilation together for Petr Cech, a foul compilation together for Peter Schmeichel. There is no perfect option, but he does look a safe and steady goalkeeper, one who is good with his feet as well. So that's what I think we're going to end up doing. Personally, is what I think we'll end up doing. We have a super chat here from Rory that says that he's been backed to us getting 5th or 7th in the league. This whole thing of him not being backed is to give Amorim an excuse. If he fouls, that's it. Look, and I actually agree with you to a certain extent. I think he has been backed. Thank you for putting that up on the screen. I do think he has been backed to a certain point, but we were only ever going to aim for 5th to 7th this year. That's all we could do. The teams currently that finished in the top 4 are just better than us. We didn't have the facilities or the money this summer to build a squad that was capable of overtaking them. I think he's been backed in the sense of he's the first manager we've seen where the players of ill discipline or the players are completely and utterly not wanted for one reason or another, have been ostracised and cancelled out. The way we're handling the Rasmus situation, I think, is brilliant. And I know some people will say it's callous. I know some people will say, oh, it's disrespectful. I can't believe we put him in the stands. The way we treat players is wrong. No, I want us to be ruthless. And you see that I'm consistent in this because I don't think that Isak and Wissa are doing anything wrong. I think football, I think all business at the highest ends is ruthless. And in sport, I have no issue with it. If a fighter is almost a world champion and he can't quite get over the line and he drops his entire coaching staff, changes gyms and becomes a world champion, fair play to him. I don't look at it and think, oh, he's poor coach to help get him to that point. People have got to do what they think is right for them. There are also coaches, though. There are also camps that throw people. I've seen this in the UFC where there's a clash in the gym between two fighters and the coaching staff have to decide which one they want to remove. And typically the one they remove is the one with the least amount of prospects of reaching the top. They'll give other reasons, but that's the real reason. I've been in gyms. I grew up in them. I've seen what goes on. That ruthlessness has to exist in football in every single which way. So that element, I think he's been backed better than any other manager so far. But that being said, there hasn't been enough backing for long enough for us to yield the return that we want yet, which is being able to win leagues. That's still going to take time. Christian here says, morning. Oh, sorry, already done that one here. Patrick Lynch says the issue is squad planning has been for 10 years. After last season, we needed a goalkeeper, a striker, a central midfielder, maybe an attacking midfielder. 2 out of the 4 have been filled. We've brought in quality, but again, not filled obvious gaps. And I think that's a really good point. I mean, but when you say striker needs to be covered, we needed 3 striker stroke attacking midfield players. So what we've gone for, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, we have done this to add firepower. We have done this to go, and I know it didn't pay dividends in the first game, but you can definitely see how it will. You can definitely see now how what we have, Cass can pick that ball up and just knock it into a channel, and we're going to create opportunities and chances. We couldn't do that last year. And our guys are going to get better with each other. So that's been their aim so far. I think what we'll do, I think we'll add a goalkeeper. The only position out of those ones that you've mentioned there that I don't know if we're going to fill is a CM. But I hope we do pivot to Gomez. I've been convinced by a lot of people that he's good enough. And I hope that we do that. But really, really good super chat that, Patrick. It really, really is. Lee here says, Amorim hasn't got the best out of what he's had in any shape or form. All he has done is divide the dressing room and people fall for the league table is what matters, and he's fouled miserably. I think it's fair to say it looks like that right now, and you could end up being ultimately rightly. You could ultimately be right. But equally, so if I give you an example from my life, we had a guy, ironically, he was also called Lee. Lee Thackra was his name. He was a very, very good kickboxer. And he'd won British titles and he won European titles. And he was a very good fighter, but he could never quite get over the line at World Championships. And he'd come and train, although he was based in Hull, in the north of England. He would come and train at our club in Essex, where I was at the time, quite regularly, because he was friends. Well, he was sort of friends with benefits, one of the girls at my gym. Big up yourself. But we were all very good friends with him, and still to this day, very good friends with him. And my coach said to him, look, I don't want to step on your coach's toes, but one of your biggest issues, it was essentially his ability to high kick. So he was saying that there was quite a lot of fighters at world level that were susceptible to other fighters whose essentially their flexibility was better and they could kick higher and faster. And he said that's an area that you don't score points in because you just can't kick well enough. So my coach said, look, we can teach you to kick better, but you're going to have to kick better, but also to do it in the points fighting style, you're going to have to change elements of your fighting because the way you stand, the way your stance works is you're very fist heavy in the sense of you're ready to hit with your hands. So you've got to take it back. And Lee really struggled. He really, really struggled to adapt to the two. And I always remember our coach Arthur saying to him, listen, you've got to drop everything you know for a period. And we've got to strip you back and start you all over again and build you up again like you're a beginner. And for a period, even in sparring at the gym, people like me that couldn't get near him, in fact, he was so much better than I was, where I was able to beat him. Because it was essentially he was being forced into not doing the old things to learn the new things. And over the course of about 6 to 9 months, you just started seeing him getting better and better and better and better. Lo and behold, 2 years later, this man he didn't just win one world title, he won it 4 years running. He now owns one of the biggest and most successful gyms in the UK. He's an absolute killer on the mats. And that was all about stripping things back. He got worse before he got better. So it's very difficult for me sometimes I agree with where you're coming from, Lee Dixon. I think that you make a really solid point. But sometimes in life, you go backwards before you go forward. And I think this season, you will see us move forward. And I know that we always want to see if you can get the best out of what you've got. The problem is with football, it isn't always as simple as that. If you've got a player that's brilliant, if you've got a player that's brilliant and there's one little thing he isn't doing, you've got to teach him to box crush. You can do that. Sometimes, though, you just can't. For instance, I think the biggest issue with our team is the physicality. We just can't teach. We couldn't make Christian Eriksen Belieber. There's nothing we could do. There's no training in the world that can make that happen. If it was an action, if it was a technique, that is more coachable. But I think we've got to see. But I really love that comment. I think it was great. Tom here says, we finished 15th and only had signed 3 first-team players. Teams already ahead of us are signing more players than us. It's a very good point. And you can see the comments agree with that. That's also been that's why we need that goalkeeper. And that's why ideally we need the central midfield player. We really, really do. James here says, I think the intention to back Amorim with a complete squad rebuild is there. Mistakes have been made, but there is also financial barriers and contracts that have been waited out, like Casemiro. This is also very true, and this is why I remain very patient with it, because, and this brings us very, very, James, the perfect super chat to segue into the conversation surrounding Garnacho and Sancho. Because I know that's been discussed on the channel over the last few days, but I think it's absolutely integral. Casemiro is another. Casemiro is different in the sense that he's dedicated to the cause. He's sort of dedicated to the cause, and he is working hard, so he's still with the squad. But I absolutely agree. I think if the club today received a 20 million, 30 million, 40 million pound bid for Casemiro from Saudi, and they were going to cover his wages or double his wages and he left, I think you'd see us very quickly go out again and try and buy someone. But he's very hard to move on, Cass, because of the money the previous regime gave him. You've got Jadon Sancho. Now, I don't hate on Jadon Sancho on a personal level because he is absolutely, in every single which way, he is entitled to do what he wants. And he just is. He is entitled to do exactly what he wants, when he wants, and how he wants. He just is. There's no beating about that bush. He's entitled to do it. He's under a contract. Now that is so annoying. Equally, we are entitled to say no to loan moves, to put him in the reserves and take a year of football away from him and stick to the contract. We're also entitled to do that. I've just learned over the last few years, especially, to not get emotional over it. I don't want to see him eating his lunch in a car. I think that's demeaning. I don't want to see him having to change around the back of a building because for whatever reason. I don't want to demean anybody in that way. But Jadon Sancho is looking for a specific deal that hasn't come his way yet. That's holding us back. And what I bring it back to is that is holding Manchester United back. You know, look at your super chat that James did. We leave James's super chat up on the screen. It's so important to remember this. The Jadon Sancho wages, £250,000, £300,000 a week, are massive. We still owe money on him. These things stop us from investing in new players. And I've said for a long time we should care about the money. If you overspend and if you undersell for too long, you run out of the cash. We'll never complete that squad rebuild. The intention is there, but there are legacy problems that need to be removed first. And these legacy issues are still holding us back, and they are not the fault of our new part owners, and that is not the fault of Ruben Amorim. Yes, people will say, just pay the debt off, just do this. It's not possible. Our owners are the first owners in 20 years to actually pump their own money into the club, but you can only pump in around 98 million over a 3-year period that go towards salaries and player purchases. So what Ineos cannot do is pump 300 more million into the club and pay off the debts to other clubs. It can't be done. Yes, we can run up a credit facility, but you still got to pay that back. You know, it's like a credit card. It isn't free money. So I think it's really important to remember that. Then you have the Garnacho situation. And you have Garnacho, who, for me, is... Look, he has been very petulant. He has been a baby. He has been a child. We've seen him turn down Bayern Munich to wait for Chelsea. And I don't want to talk about Chelsea too much. I do that on the Football Terrace, my main channel. We're live, by the way, on the Football Terrace after this for a phone-in show. If you want to come across and join us, that would be amazing. I'd love to see some of you there. But from my point of view, how do I say this in the right way? Garnacho's got to be very careful here. I like how strong we're being, but the stories are very interesting right now. So he's turned down Bayern Munich. He only wants Chelsea. He's agreed personal terms with Chelsea. But Chelsea keep telling us he's worth 25 million. Man United are saying it's 50 million or nothing. Now, my gut feeling is that we will meet somewhere in the middle. There'll be a deal. And remember, a deal is not a deal if we give Chelsea what they want. A deal is not a deal if Man United if we get 50 million base plus add-ons, it's not a deal for Chelsea. United won. If we meet somewhere in the middle and it ends up being a 40 million pound plus add-ons deal, it's a deal because both people have sort of like what's the word I'm looking for here? Both people are doing a very, very similar thing. So I think it's really, really important to remember that. I think it's really, really important to understand the complexity of that, the way a deal works. Sorry, I read something. I thought it was breaking news. It wasn't. It threw my head. Aside from that, I think what's really, really key to remember here is Garnacho only wants Chelsea. But currently, this is what I'd be saying to Garnacho if I was in the Man United boardroom. So look, we respect the fact that you want to go Chelsea. But you're turning down Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs ever in the world, one of the best current teams in the world. You're turning them down for Chelsea, who are not prepared to meet your valuation. What does that tell you? What message does that send? Will Chelsea then come in for you? Because what I'd be saying to Garnacho, again, and this is what I call backing a manager, what I would be saying to Alejandro Garnacho, what I would be screaming at him is, if you don't leave, you will not play football. The warnings have already come out. Have you seen what they've said in Argentina? That in the last time he played for them, they brought him on as a sub and they said, look, we want you to just take on the fullback. And I love hearing this. We need more of it in football. It was take on the fullback and don't worry about losing the ball. If you attempt to take him on 20 times and lose the duel 20 times, we're going to pat you on the back and say you kept on going. And I loved hearing that because I think Chase and Sancho, ironically, done it at Chelsea and Man United. It's like, go on, mate, take your man on. Take your man on. Didn't do it. Take your man on. Didn't do it. Take your man on. Didn't do it. Oh, he kept the possession well, though. And I understand there are times to keep possession. But from my point of view and from my perspective, it's like, no, keep going at the player. Because you only have to beat him once or twice and we might score a goal. I remember when we'd play Arsenal when Ashley Cole was in his pomp. Chelsea, when he was at Chelsea as well. And Ronaldo was up against him. And I remember watching it with my Chelsea and Arsenal mates. And maybe the first 3 or 4 times Ronaldo tried to beat him, the Ashley Cole won the ball. Oh, got him pocketed. And I always used to throw this out there as a little ominous view. And yeah, but Ronaldo only has to beat them once and we score. Your defender has to be perfect every single time. It's harder for the defender. If we create 5 or 6 really good chances per game, it's far more likely we score goals than have them saved. Because of the strikers can miss 2 or 3 chances. They might score their 3rd or 4th, their 5th. how many saves the goalkeeper's actually making games. I'll give you an example. Raya made 7 saves on Sunday. It's the most saves made in a game for, I think, a decade. So that's why when Man United fans are, I'm really worried. I'm worried if our performance level's not at that level again. But if we perform like that and create those goal-scoring opportunities again, typically speaking, you're going to win matches because goalkeepers don't typically make that amount of saves historically. So I look at this situation. We go back to the Argentina. The reason why I love what they said is that that's when he's at his best. But they got frustrated with him in the Argentina coaching staff because he kept on passing the ball back. And they're like, no, we brought you on to attack. We need you to attack. And essentially the word coming out of Argentina is this young man who we know is talented is not going to the World Cup unless he's playing regular football. And if he improves. And if Chelsea don't come up with the money, I want Man United to punish him. Not because I'm callous towards the man. This is not about hurting Alejandro Garnacho, the man. It's about the professional side of things. We need to open a can of whoop-ass. We need to lay the smack down, the people's elbow, going back to my youth now, on a player on a professional level. We need to lay a marker that says you don't get to dictate to us anymore. It's harder with the Sanchos, the Rashfords, the Antonys. It would be harder with the Casemiro if he was misbehaving because of the money they're on. They leave you in a more precarious position. But Alejandro Garnacho doesn't have that financial burden upon us. It's do this as you don't play. Get your move or you don't play. Make him blink. You wield your axe. Use some power here. Get it done. Simon here with a super chat says, why not Chelsea give us 50 million and it goes through the books at that price behind closed doors when we have them, we hand them back 20 million. Listen, I see a lot of people saying, what is this? There is, look, you wouldn't be able to do it exactly in this way, but there are a lot of rumours. There are a lot of rumours that a number of teams, including Chelsea, and I want to stress, these are rumours, that a number of teams like Chelsea, there are rumours that Liverpool do this. There are rumours, fan theory and rumours, that the price you see publicly is not the price in reality. And I'll give you an example of this. It's changed a lot now because of the digital side of games. But when I grew up in Leighton, in East London, Leighton Orient's football stadium wasn't just next to where I lived. My tower block I grew up in looked over the pitch. And my dad always used to laugh on Saturdays when they would announce the attendance. They'd say, thank you, everybody at Brisbane Road. Today's attendance is 8,972. My dad would always laugh. So why are you laughing, Dad? He goes, definitely 10 to 11,000. So what do you mean? Back in that day and age, clubs would always lie about how many people were there because most people pay cash to come in. So it was a case of if they announce that it's 11,000 people and they sell 4,000, 6,000 season tickets a year, well, the tax man will know exactly how much money you made. Where if you announce publicly and put on all your records, only 8,000 people turned up, there was no real way of knowing because you could just pay on the door. And there was no real way of auditing it. That way, people at the top of the club could take cash, right? Cream off the top. So things like this have existed in football at all levels for a long time. There is a theory going around. Now, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm not pointing the proverbial finger. But there are rumours to this super chat here from Simon that clubs agree £50 million deals. But there is a theory of, do they ever receive the 50 million? How much of the 50 million do they write off as bad debt? But without issuing county court judgments against the football clubs that haven't paid them. Because the one thing I'd say about the books is you can do that. I'll give you an example. Man United right now are being run by 2 different limited companies, right? So let's say one of those limited companies owes money for buying players, but then doesn't pay 20 million of it. You could essentially wind that company. You could make that one individual company go into isolation. Theoretically, you could do these things. The problem is with doing it is that if you ever get caught out, even though there is probably an argument that legally it's okay, criminally it's okay, morally and ethically people would challenge it. There is a theory this goes on in football. There is a theory that goes on in football that people look at it and say, hang on a minute. And this is what Man United are doing at the moment. Man United are turning around and saying, hang on, Chelsea. You got £55 million for Madueke, a player you didn't think was good enough. But a player you do now think is good enough, you only value at £25 million. United have got to stand their ground on this. What some people think is, well, are they actually going to get 55 million for Madueke? Maybe they're going to only end up getting 30 million and then bad debt or something along those lines. And there's probably far more complex ways of doing this, but bad debt is a thing. And I have bad debt. We've had some sponsors before on the Football Terrace who haven't paid us for one reason or another. You chase the money for a long time, but in the end, you have to write that off as a bad debt, and it goes. So at the end of the day, it's one of those things where these things could certainly happen, but if you're not receiving the money, you're not receiving the money. And I think that's, but again, this is what I'd love to know. If you write off bad debt, so let's just say you sell a player for 50 million, you can show it on your trading account straight away. If you only end up receiving 30 and then the rest gets written off as a bad debt, does that impact FFP? I'd like to ask an expert that question, because if it doesn't, then not receiving the cash isn't an issue, because you can just make the loss and go, I know we lost another 200 million there, but it's all bad debt. We didn't get the money off the clubs. I don't know if there's a way of doing that. It might not be. Again, it's fan theory. I'm not saying this really happens, but fans think it. I'm just putting out the conspiracy theory that's there. But yeah, it's a lot of people think that's what's going on. Take 60 million and buy Lucien and Mateus midfield sorted for the next 6 years. Red here says absolutely has to be professionally slapped down, not just for himself, but for others to see as well. No, I agree. I agree sometimes, and we've all experienced that at school. You may not have misbehaved. You may not have got in trouble, but you will see a hang on a second. What you'll see happen is like this element of you will see this sort of somebody else will misbehave or mouth off at a teacher, but the teacher really shuts them down, shouts at them, and you all go back in your chair. And it makes you think, well, I'm not gonna mess around for him or for her. They're stern. You can sometimes discipline other people without anything going wrong. You can just lay that message down. And I think we've got a great opportunity here to help fix the culture with the right behaviour. I really do. To stop players like Sancho and Garnacho and Anthony Onana misbehaving poorly, in the future we need to restructure our wages, not to overpay these players silly weekly wages and set standards. But that's what's been going on, Man United Greek fan. And that's why I see the legacy issue still causing us problems. But again, I went through this in my professional career. When I joined Barclays Bank, it was about 9 months from the financial collapse that hit. Then there was the PPI scandal. Then there was the sort of the overdraft charges and the bounce payment charges that everybody used to get back then. If you're young, you won't even remember this stuff. And I joined the bank and I was wet behind the ears and people were complaining about all these things. And I remember just sitting there saying, I've only just joined. I've no idea what you're talking about, because I just hadn't experienced any of it. And after a period of time, the banks had all the billions of pounds worth of fines and sanctions, and we had to pay all this money back to all these customers. And I remember the new leaders then took over the bank, because all the people in charge went and new people came in. And I just remember for years, whenever they were trying to expand or do new things, departments were just held back. And this is why I use the word legacy issue. And this is what was because of the exact terminology we use in the bank, was certain departments couldn't be expanded, branches couldn't be updated, offices couldn't be revamped. There wasn't the budgets, because so much of the money that was being made in that year had to be given out to customers to repay them for things they'd done wrong in the past. Plus, the bank used to make a lot of money. Used to make a lot of bad money, is the phrase we use internally. So if you had a direct debit that bounced, you would charge 35, 45 pounds. The bank was making money, and then you'd get overdrawn, you'd get overdraft fees. So we were making like thousands of pounds a month for certain customers for like putting them in debt. And it was awful the way the banks behaved. Awful. So suddenly when we weren't doing that anymore, that's an awful lot of money that we used to have coming into us that we didn't have. So the new regime trying to grow the bank, grow revenues, improve things, had one arm tied behind their back because of legacy issues. It took many, many years for these legacy issues to go away because you just have to ride the storm. You have to go through the process. But every couple of years when big amounts were paid off, new ways of making money came in, less money from the revenue had to be used on the legacy issues. You saw new branches, new technology, new departments, investments in the right areas, investments in technology, and these things grew. So, yeah, and also there were cuts made and lots of branches were shut down that weren't needed anymore because they were losing and hemorrhaging money. And then there was new innovative ways for people to bank. And I always use that as an example as well, because that's similar with football clubs. When we've got massive legacy issues, we've got huge debts and huge problems and huge money that we owe because of massive mistakes made by the previous regimes. You can't just wipe it off anymore. You theoretically could if the Glazers would allow it, but we're still hampered with that problem. That's why it's going to take time for me. That's why it's going to take time to get through these. That's why it's going to take time to get through these issues. This here, Desire here says, my blood pressure ain't good enough to survive one more season with Onana and Altai. Get me a goalkeeper. I hear you. I hear you a lot when you say that, my friend. I feel very, very, very much the same. It worries me massively. There was another super chat that came through that I missed. It was just up on the screen. If we could put that back, that would be amazing. It might still be on my screen. I don't know. Oh, here it is. I found it from the Fade. He says, swap Garnacho for Jackson, sign Sporting's keeper. I don't want Jackson at Man United. We don't need Jackson. He's not as good as finisher as Šeško, in my opinion, and he's not as good at the approach play as Cunha and Mbumo. So, an absolutely pointless deal for us. Personally, my friend. Yeah, I see a lot of you talking about the Bundesliga thing. Yeah, listen, I know a lot of you just tuned in. What Mark and the team have done to land that is amazing. Every Friday, the games will be shown alongside the watch-alongs. And listen, you'll have, there's still a few other big broadcasters that will be doing the same thing, which is fine. But what I love, and I'm happy for Mark on, is that Mark comes up with so many innovative things that then people just, it might be his overlays, it might be styles of shows. Just within a few days, people to go and like copy it and go, I'm going to do the same. They can't do this because they're not going to be able to play the footage, which is amazing. I had it yesterday. I did a video yesterday about what True Druldy said about Isak and Jota. And literally, the thumbnail was plagiarized. Even the way I positioned the video on the screen was plagiarized. And it's like, you can't do nothing about it. It is what it is. You're like, oh, okay, fair enough. But that's why I'm so happy to see a deal like this where you think, someone just can't go, I'm going to do that now as well. You can't do it. It's great and it's good to see, and more of that needs to come in. There's so many ideas get stolen. It's unbelievable. Like mine and Mark's Hot Take show on the Football Terrace. People are naming their own shows Hot Takes now. It's crazy. And doing very similar. I have a show where we're called Six Sided, where we don't just go, what did you think of the game? We ask very specific questions about the game based on fan statements. Again, I just know within the next couple of weeks, everybody else is going to start doing it. And there's nothing you can do to control it. But this you can do. So yeah, really, really happy for Mark and the team for that. Well done, Terry and Mark. What an achievement. Oh, listen, I've done nothing for it. So don't well done me. This is Mark and his team. I'm happy to hopefully be a part of it as I'm part of the community now. But no congratulations needed to me. I did nothing on that. Drop me out, mate. Drop me out. Terry, Andy Cole went through the very same thing when he joined us from Newcastle. What do you mean, very same thing? Neville here says, I think Mount might be better in the midfield role if only he could run more and wasn't injury prone. Well, this is the issue. He doesn't have the legs to play midfield. If he plays midfield too much, his body will break down. I think he's better in the 10 role. He's just not going to, for me, once Šeško's fit, he's just not going to be the main 10. He's going to be a sub. Well spoken, Terry. Love your analysis. You are to the point. Thank you. I appreciate that, my friend. I appreciate that a lot. Just came across a brote. Okay, I don't know what that means. I really rate the Nacho. Rate the Nacho man. I want to be. Oh, okay. Terry. Thankfully, Truthfully speaking, I appreciate you and Mark, passionate United fans. But we do our best, you know. Not everyone's going to agree with all of our opinions, but we, you know, me and Mark don't see a lot of things at United the same. But that's why it's so important for platforms like this to exist, where there is a dichotomy of opinion, where we're open to what other people have got to say. We listen to the challenges and we have conversations. And that's how I think that helps the football club, I think, if we do it properly. Mainu will replace Bruno next season, just see. So the Mainu situation is really interesting because I'm really worried. I love Mainu. I think he's such a talented player. And I'm worried after Amorim's comments on Sunday about the people he picks to start are people that he thinks can finish games. And I'm worried that he doesn't think Mainu has the physical attributes, and I'm talking more the stamina, to play with high intensity for 90 minutes. That's a fear. But I did hear what Mark said last night, that maybe Mainu is just a long-term replacement for Bruno. And because if he signs a new deal, Mainu, which Amorim is pushing for, every report coming out the club is that Amorim wants him to sign a new deal. So as much as I'm worried that Amorim doesn't think he's got the physicality for it, why is Amorim pushing for him to sign a new deal? That does, you know, you'd say because he rates him. Is this just a case of us not wanting to overuse such a young man straight away, and we're still going to nurture him and bleed him in? Because actually, I think back to Mason Greenwood's a different case because of why he's not playing for us anymore. But with Rashford looking back, Stevie, you look at Garnacho, most of us have said they probably played too much first-team football too soon. And maybe there is this train of thought at Manchester United that they don't want to overuse Mainu to... I know we're desperate to see him play because we know how good he is on the ball. But he's already picked up quite a few injuries in his young career already with the physicality of the game and the running he's got to do. Maybe there is this train of thought to bleed him in a little bit more. You know, we're all panicking and a lot of people, Amorim don't know ball, we don't know ball. And it's funny how we all talk about loyalty to footballers, but we've got no loyalty to their body. In the sense of just play them, run them into the ground, I don't care what happens to them. Well, I kind of do. So what I'm hoping is that he is a long-term replacement for Bruno, because I think he'll do a great job in that double pivot once he settles in there. And I'm also hoping that the club is maybe being a little bit more conservative with him in his younger years, so that he does get nurtured right. Because I actually think Rashford is a very good player. I think Garnacho is a very good player. But I think they'd both be much better if they weren't almost overplayed in their younger years. So there's a number of train of thoughts that is going on here. And I hope, by the way, I hope the latter is right. I do hope this is about bleeding him in and nurturing him slowly. I really, really do. Because he's such a talent. He's such a talent, and I am worried about it. Like, genuinely, I am worried about it. Like, it does worry me a lot. This here says, let's have a little look here. Sorry, I just saw the funniest thing ever. This here says, we give them too much too soon. It gets in their heads, and they start to feel like they can walk all over us. That's another great point. It's another great thing to look at. Such a fantastic point. Maybe, just maybe, there's an element here of... And by the way, there's nothing Mainu has ever said or done that makes me think his feet are not firmly on the ground. But you know that everybody's corruptible? Everyone. I remember listening to René Mullenstein, and he spoke about Januzaj and James Wilson. And he said that Januzaj had the season already in the first team and was doing very well. And James Wilson, in the last 4 or 5 matches of the season, got into the first team squad. If you remember, Giggsy played him, and I think he's got a brace on his debut. And René Mullenstein said that just a little while after that, they were in the jacuzzi in the training facilities, and he said it was just the way they were talking to other young players, like we've made it, you bums are still down. I'm slightly paraphrasing here and changing words slightly, but we're here, you guys are down there. I added the bums part into it. René didn't say that. I'm here, you guys are down there. Look at us, look what we're doing, look at you. There was this sort of arrogance that was built up of this, we've made it. And he sort of said, if I remember correctly, he sort of said, when a young player like that has the mindset they've made it, you kind of stop trying. you kind of... So I've had this argument before with Chelsea fans when I said, Tammy Abraham wasn't ever good enough for Chelsea. Well, he was good enough. He played a lot of games for us. I went, no, I think when you sell a player before his peak years to another club, and that club isn't even as good as you, I don't think that constitutes as making it. I look at Tom Cleverley as an example, who won league titles with us. I don't think Tom Cleverley made it at Man United. By the definition of what I'm looking at, I think making it at Man United is like the club is desperate to keep you in its best years, in your best years together. And even if you are sold, it's only because you've been replaced by someone that's even better than you. If it's like, yeah, you've been fine, but you're going to go off and play for a much smaller club, you're leaving in your peak years because we've got to upgrade you, I don't look at that necessarily as making it. I hope you get my framing of making it. Does that make sense? Some might say, I think making it is when you play one game. That's fine. If that's what you consider making it, I can appreciate that. I'm just telling you mine. When I think about a player making it, I look at it and go, you won trophies, you were integral, you were such an important part of the team. Like Rashford's made it. The only reason he's going at this stage is because relationship breakdown. That's a different scenario to me. Because if the relationship hadn't broken down, he'd still be in the first team. And the club would still want to keep him. You know he's a good player because Barcelona want him. Garnacho the same. It's Chelsea and Bayern Munich that want him. He's not wanted by I don't know, Olympiacos. He's not wanted by, Timbuktu FC. They're wanted by big clubs. So I do look at it sometimes and I worry about young players getting corrupted by the fame and the bad people that might gravitate to them, people getting in their ears. So there is an element of that, to not give young players too much too soon. I think we've done that so many times in the last decade, and it's bitten us on the backside. Again, nothing about Mainu has ever made me think that he is or would be like that. There's nothing. That being said, I didn't think, when I heard that story about James Wilson, he never come across like that, but he was, according to Rene Mullenstein. I think we need to be really careful. I feel like we're missing out by not playing Kone. Yeah, again, Kone is another one. And I know we are all desperate to bring through this 17, 18-year-old wonder kid who can run a midfield and can kill it. And I get that. We all thought that last year about Chido Obi, who I still think is talented. Then we saw him in the first team. And we could all see straight away he ain't ready yet. He ain't ready to start yet. And I think when you overplay players are not physically or technically or both ready to play in the Premier League, I think you can burn them before. I think you can burn them before they've made it. And I look back at Januzaj, I look back at James Wilson, I look back and think of course, Rashford and Garnacho that we've mentioned. I think, and you guys can probably remember some more players. I think we could end up. I think we just could end up overusing players too soon, and it can damage them. It really, really can. I really, really can. Wissa, Garnacho, Isak, players refusing to play. It's crazy. Let them rot in the reserves, I say, with a blank check. Who would you go and sign? Look, I listen. I'm. It's really interesting because I'm not angry at any of those players. I'm actually also I'm going to be talking about this on the Football Terrace after this show. So come across and join us. We're going to be going into this in more detail. I do think that Newcastle haven't kept a promise to him. I do think Brentford haven't kept a promise to Wissa. I do believe in that. Man United and Garnacho situation actually different. There's no accusation of promises not being kept. We're just saying, bring us the valuation. We're doing more what Man City do, which is bring us the valuation and we'll go. I do get a feeling that Newcastle and Brentford, for a number of different reasons, have moved goalposts. But equally, I'm not angry at that. I think the club I think you can't expect no reaction. And I thought long and hard about this last night. I don't think you can expect the football players to not react. But the same as after what Isak said last night, I think it's right that Newcastle react because this is business. This isn't personal. So it's one of, and I saw Newcastle fans last night going, my club, yes, my club, I love this. I'm like, cool. Don't be angry at Brentford or Wissa though if it doesn't join. If they do the same thing. That's what I'm talking about. It's the hypocrisy in this. So I'm not personally angry at Garnacho. I'm keeping my energy 100%, right? I think Newcastle made mistakes this summer. I think Newcastle haven't not told the truth, but I don't think Newcastle will follow through with the promises they've made. I believe Isak on that. But equally, it's the nature of the beast sometimes in business. People go back on their word. It's then your job to fight a way out of it. You've got to do it. Hey, Terry, what's going on with Malacia? There's interest in Malacia from a few different football clubs. I think we'll get a sell for him. I think the only reason why people haven't gone for Malacia is I think there's big concerns around his knee. You know, none of us still really don't know why he was missing for 35 years. I still don't really know. Or maybe I missed it. I still don't even really know what happened to him. Genuinely, still don't really know why he was out for so long, why he wasn't in the squad and in the team. It was a very, very interesting situation indeed. So yeah, I still don't quite understand what happened to him. Bodge surgery. I thought I remember reading. The manager has been backed, but nowhere near to the level he needs if he's going to turn things around. Top 10 at best is what James says here. Lee Dixon is back with us again. Says Mainly's problem at United is he doesn't have a set position. Well, that's also another great point where when you transition from when you transition styles, and we've done that as a club, there are always casualties. Whether people like it or not, there are always casualties. There are always situations where you kind of end up in a situation where you can find a player or two that just don't fit what you're trying to build. And that's part of the reason why some people hate Ruben Amorim, because players like Garnacho and Rashford and mainly they loved are being potentially partly being ousted, potentially, because they don't fit that system, that style. So people turn on the manager because player FC is so prevalent in our fan base, because essentially, barring a few cup wins, all we've really had to gloat about and be proud of is certain individual players being good. So we can't handle the fact they're being moved on. This fan base would have had aneurysms in the 90s with the way Fergie moved players on. You know, when Kanchelskis and Ince and Hughes have moved on, some of this fan base would have been hyperventilating all summer. Nigel here with a super chat says the likes of Garnacho and Sancho are in the comfort zone. Getting that much PR at a young age will make you complacent, especially if you're not grounded as a person. I think even if you're grounded as a person, you can be corrupted. You only have to look at the entertainment industry to see that and listen to the stories of the entertainers that are in their 40s and 50s now that were like, yeah, I was a normal working class lad. I got involved. You know, you read Robbie Williams' stories and look what he was when he started, what he ended up becoming, which was a little bit of a monster, really, in terms of behavior, drug abuse, alcohol, behaving like a crazy man. You know, you lose yourself because you can get lost within. Like when I told you about the bank, when I joined the bank, now I was quite fortunate that I wasn't even selling any of the stuff that ended up getting. It was already taken off the shelf before I joined. But I remember speaking to colleagues of mine who were like, "Yeah, we sold." To this day, they'll still tell you that PPI was a fine and good product because they were almost indoctrinated to believe that it was, and had not been able to get that out of their system because they would just you go into an industry and everybody's behaving in a certain way, selling certain things. These are the rules, and the whole world accepted it. So therefore, your brain starts to say, well, this is normal then. This is normal because everyone does it and no one's in trouble. Everyone's conscience is fine. And you do that for 10 years. It's very hard to undo that way of thinking. Something, what do you mean it's wrong? But actually, it's like we used to refer to them in the bank as Spanish customs. They weren't even really part of the bank's process. They just started happening. No one ever stopped it. So it became the norm. And that is that happens at Manchester United. People get corrupted because of the bad culture. And their behaviours become normality. And what you have to do is stamp that out. So I don't think that Mainoo has shown any signs of behaving this way. But you need to set a standard of behaviour for everybody that stops it from happening, because I believe everybody is corruptible. Everyone is. Every single person is. And the biggest people that you know are the ones who say, I'm not, mate, you never get me. I think that means I've been done. They've almost been corrupted to push that out there. We all have the ability for it in one way, shape or form. Look, I want to thank every single person who has tuned into the show this morning. It means a great deal to me. It really, really does. The team's back at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m, of course, same every day. So make sure you're back for the breaking news, the biggest updates and podcasts. I'm live in a few minutes on the Football Terrace. So if you'd like to come and join me over there, we're talking Isak, we're talking Wissa, we're talking about player power. We're doing phone-in shows this morning. It'd be great to see you all over there. Until next time, everybody, take care, goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you all again.